Dear viewers, I would like to welcome to my video program on the subject related to the response of the United Nations organization to the developments of violation of domestic law in the state of India. In my previous video, I have dealt with how the presidential election 2022 was defective, how I was deemed to be the President of India, and how violations to the Constitution of India have taken place. In the present video, I would like to deal with you on the aspect of what is the response of the United Nations to the developments of violation of domestic law in the state of India. Immediately after the conduct of the president election, I wrote one letter to the United Nations organization addressing Secretary General and the National Court of Justice. The letter was dated on 27/2022. The contents of the letter, how I was deemed to be the President of India, what were the legal provisions supporting my candidature as a deemed to be the President of India. And the second aspect was how the de facto President of India, Mrs. Draupadi Murmu's electoral outcome was null and void ab initio, and how the swearing-in ceremony conducted to her by the erstwhile Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India was illegal, unconstitutional and illegitimate. These two aspects I highlighted in the letter. Against my letter, the United Nations organization communicated me wide its letter dated October 2022. The contents of the letter were: the United Nations could not intervene in the domestic jurisdiction of the member state of India, was unable to intervene because as per Article 27 of the Charter, the state has a protection or immunity against the outside organs or organizations. Since the UNO is also an outside organization, the UNO expressed its inability to intervene in the domestic jurisdiction of the state of India. But how far the decision of the United Nations is legal? As far as my knowledge goes, the Article 27 of the Charter has become weakened now. The reasons for the weakening of this article, number one, is here the violation has taken place to the domestic law itself. When the domestic law is violated, there is every possibility that the state loses its government and loses its sovereignty. When the loss of the internal sovereignty took place, there is no scope for protection of that particular country under Article 27 of Charter of UN. In the instant case also, the same thing happened. Immediately after the swearing-in ceremony to Mrs. Draupadi Murmu, the Constitution was violated. As I have already explained to you, there is an article in the Constitution, that is Article 52. As per Article 52, there shall be a President of India. It means there should not be any break in the position of the office of the President of India permanently. But immediately after the swearing-in ceremony, there occurred a break in the position of the President of India. The break or vacuum in the position of the President of India causes the violation of the Constitution. The violation of the Constitution causes the loss of legal validity of the three organs of the state of India. The same thing happened in 2022. All the three organs of the state of India lost their legal validity as the organs of the state. After the loss of the organs of the state of India, the government of India also lost its legal validity or relevance. When the government of India lost its legal validity, the sovereignty of India also has lost its position. That means the internal sovereignty. Therefore, there is no government strictly in speaking in terms of law, and there is no sovereignty. Hence, the protection under Article 27 of the UN Charter is ruled out in a particular case. But whether the UNO aware of this fact at that time or not, I don't know. The UNO took the decision that as per Article 27, the UNO was incompetent to interfere in the domestic jurisdiction of the state of India. That was the decision took by the United Nations time. Actually, the UNO should have been aware of the fact that the head of the state was not having legality, was not having the legal validity as the President of India or the head of the state of India. That fact they ignored it. The impact of the loss of legal validity of the President of India has also on international. How it affects international law means, number one, the head of the state has to enter into international agreements or contracts, both bilateral and multilateral. These agreements have a bearing on international law. These agreements immediately after entry have to be registered in the UNO in a particular department. So it touches the international law. The another aspect is, as a head of the state or the President of India, the President has to declare war. War is not confined to domestic law. War is touching the international. The definition of the war and the conditions of waging the war, etc., are defined in international law. So the declaration of the war by the head of the state touches the international. On this count also, international law is violated. But the UNO did not touch these two aspects, but simply they told me that they could not intervene in the domestic matter. They purely treated the violation of the organs of the state of India resulted in the violation of the domestic law was a pure matter of the domestic law. It was not like that. It was touching the international law. So nowadays there is a thin margin between international law and the domestic. Earlier the law was having two aspects. One is a domestic aspect and the other one is international law. It was the position during the 19th century that the states were absolutely sovereign. The absolute sovereignty prevented the international organization or any other state to intervene in the domestic matters of a particular state. Therefore, it was a state-centric international law. State-centric international law. The situation has been changed now. It is no more a state-centric international law. The international law is a supra-global national law in the sense that in addition to the state as a subject, other actors also entered into international sphere. They are individuals and other NGOs and United Nations organizations, etc. So the international law is no more a monopoly of the states. In this context also, the sovereign nature or the monopoly of the state as a subject before law has been diluted. And another thing is, the domestic law and the international law are unified or hierarchical in nature. Earlier it was thought that international law was separate and domestic law was separate. Domestic law was confined to dealing with the domestic matters and the international law was confined to exclusively dealing with the external matters. But in a changed situation due to certain developments such as human rights and just causes and earth governments, the nature of the international law has been changed and it has become a global law. Now it is no more the complete immunity to the state of India under Article 27. Therefore, was the responsibility of the United Nations to intervene at that time, but it ignored that aspect. It simply informed me, keeping in view the traditional nature of the international. So you can imagine how far the UNO is justified in stating that the matter is related to the domestic matter. The next thing is, the violation to the domestic law in India took place not only during 2022, its origin goes back to 1974. I told you already in my previous video that origins of the violation of the constitution goes back to the presidential election of 1974. Why? Because for the first time, the section which I told you about the null, section 5B1A, was made as a law, made as a a legislation in 1974. After that legislation, they conducted the elections to the President of India. So the violation started with the election of Mr. Fakruddin Ali Ahmad in 1974. Then onwards, the violation to the Constitution of India continued up to the President of India election 2022. So what was the result of that violation on the domestic law, and what was the impact of the violation of the domestic law on international law? We have to examine. First of all, the impact of the violation of the Constitution in 1974 to the President of India election 2022 is all the appointments made by the President of India were illegal and unconstitutional. You know the fact that any appointing authority must have a legality. The President of India lost his legality or constitutionality in 1974. Afterwards, all the presidential elections were conducted on the same null. So all the presidents became unconstitutional and illegal. So what happened to their appointments? All the appointments made by them were illegal. That is the law. Of course, I am not a student of law, so know all the details. I am revealing these facts based on some common sense. Common sense point of view, I am revealing facts. Of course, authenticity will be examined in due course of time. But as of today, if you go back to the 50 years history, means no official in India is legal. All the three organs have lost their legality. All the departments have lost their legality. Even the military officials also lost their legality. No military officer is legal today. So in the prevailing scenario, how the Indian state protects itself in the event of a war? Before international law, it has no legality to wage a war against another state. I brought this matter to the notice of the UNO during the crisis in the recent war against Pakistan. What is that Pahalgama crisis? I think that terror attack. After the terror attack, Indian government attacked the Pakistan. So I don't know exactly whether they declared the war legally or not, but some unofficial war took place. I think if legal declaration might have been taken place, it was a violation, and the persons who waged the war were treated as war criminals. I don't know whether our legal experts and international lawyers are aware of these facts or not, I don't know. But still, government of India is going on in a legal vacuum. Whether they are aware of the fact that nobody should act without the basis of law or not, I don't know. Or they may be thinking that still they are working under the law. Of course, I don't know all these things. But the fact is, before international law, if this domestic violation takes place, the country is not in a position to defend itself as per law. Legally speaking, war is prohibited in the international law in the event of violations to the domestic. The president cannot declare war, or the permanent executive cannot make any suggestion to the president to declare the war. As I told you, if my statement is correct, even the three organs of the state have no legality. How these people are going to wage a war against another country? They will be treated as war criminals. These are the things, these are the legal problems involved in the present crisis for the last 50 years. Even the UNO also ignored about the fact. They were under the blind impression that Article 27 protects the state from the external intervention. They are not aware of the developments in the international law. The domestic developments have a bearing on the international law. What about the legality of the diplomatic missions, high commissions of India in the United Nations? Who appointed them? How the United Nations accepted their credentials? On what basis their credentials are accepted, and they have declared the protocol and license services to all the heads of departments and the heads of heads of state and heads of the government. These things happened. All these things have no legal background, no legal basis. I don't know how the UN was a silent spectator to all these developments for the last 50 years. I brought this matter to the UNO long back, 2 or 3 years back. Still they are sleeping. I don't know what is their confidence. Even the violation of international law fixes responsibility of the United Nations. Of course, there may be certain legal loopholes. The individual has no jurisdiction before international law. That may be the strength of the UNO. So nobody can question the UNO. That is not the matter. An individual can represent to the United Nations other organs also. Individual can represent to the United Nations President, United Nations General Assembly President. There are many avenues. Anybody should see that there should not be any violation to the law. But when the violation to the law takes place, there are many avenues to project it as a violation. These people, the Secretary General, the United Nations International Court of Justice, they are the legal experts. How these people are overlooking this fact for the last 50 years. When I am writing to the United Nations, some other organ also related to the elections, I wrote to that organ. They informed me that the elections were purely internal matter, so we could not intervene. You go to your judicial organs in your home. Actually, at that time, our home department, election judicial organ also lost its legal validity. There was no judicial organ at that time. But how these international experts are giving advices like that? The violations of domestic law are reflecting in international law. How they are simply saying that we can't intervene? What is this blindness? Today, the domestic law and international law intertwined. If any violation occurs to the domestic law, it will automatically reflect in the international law. This is a legal matter I am talking. I am not talking about the political matters. Of course, political matters involve some political decisions by the Security Council. But the violations of the law involves the legal matter. It has to be decided by the International Court of Justice. How the International Court of Justice has been sleeping for the 50 years, I don't know. This is the fact. This is the fact about the domestic violations of Indian state, and this is the fact about the impact of the domestic violation on the international law. So we can understand what is the legal knowledge our people are having. I don't know how our legal pundits are not aware of all these facts. So I don't want to elaborate more on this matter. I would like to finally state that the domestic violations took place in the state of India for the last 50 years, particularly during the election of 2022. It has an impact bearing on international law. The UN also should not be a silent spectator. Even today, I told you, there is no office in India as per law in existence. I don't know how these people are drawing the salaries to these people, how these people are exercising their authorities. Okay, actually, had I done law, I would have been in a much better position to explain to you. But with the limited knowledge I acquired due to the background of the political science, I am presenting the matter before you. So you can form your opinion on the matter and judge the elites in our country, how they are running this country, what is the legal standing before international law, how they are going to protect the country in the event of the war. So all these matters, you please judge it and think over it. Thank you very much.